Welcome to this episode of the weekly News Roundup. In the United States of America, Super Tuesday, which was on March 5th, was when the largest number of states held presidential primaries or caucuses. Over a third of all the available delegates for both the Republican and Democratic nominations were at stake on Super Tuesday. President Biden is the leading contender for the Democratic nomination and he has no substantial primary challenge, while former President Donald Trump was leading former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley in the Republican nomination race. Former President Donald Trump easily defeated Governor Nikki Haley in at least 11 of the states voting on Super Tuesday. Trump held double-digit leads over Haley in 11 of the 12 states in which polls had closed: Alabama, Arkansas, Colorado, Maine, Massachusetts, Minnesota, North Carolina, Oklahoma, Tennessee, Texas, and Virginia. Nikki Haley prevailed in only one of the Super Tuesday states, Vermont, where she edged out Trump by 50% to 46%, with 90% of the vote in that state. 3 other states also held primaries or caucuses on Super Tuesday: Utah, California, and Alaska.
To date, Trump has won at least 21 Republican primary contests. If Trump continues his consistently overwhelming electoral successes in the Republican primaries, he is projected to win enough delegates to officially secure the Republican Party's nomination within the next 1 to 2 weeks. With Trump on a trajectory to secure the Republican presidential nomination, a 2024 rematch of the 2020 election is taking shape. Incumbent Democratic President Joe Biden has not faced a competitive challenge since the start of the Democratic presidential primary season. The 2024 election will be the first presidential election since the United States Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade. The Supreme Court's 2022 ruling allowed states and federal government to impose restrictions on abortion. The Biden administration has consistently supported policies to expand abortion in the United States. President Biden also signed an order to provide funding for organizations that promote abortion overseas, worked with state leaders to expand abortion, and supported legislation to block state-level pro-life laws. President Biden has campaigned hard in favor of abortion and has urged Congress to pass a law to codify the abortion standards that were set in Roe v. Wade. Trump has been less specific about his intended policies on abortion, but he has said he would sign something that pro-life voters would like, and has acknowledged that the federal government has a role in protecting life.
In latest news coming in, Nikki Haley has ended her long-shot challenge to Republican presidential frontrunner Donald Trump, ensuring the former President Donald Trump will be the party's candidate in a rematch with Democratic President Joe Biden in November's election.
In this campaign, I have seen our country's greatness. From the bottom of my heart, thank you, America. God bless you.
Anti-corruption campaigner Alexei Navalny was for long the most prominent face of Russian opposition to President Vladimir Putin. The 47-year-old blogger had survived poisoning attempts and years in some of Russia's most notorious prisons, after his group had exposed corruption at almost every level of the Russian state, frequently targeting President Putin himself. Even from behind bars, unable to challenge President Putin at the ballot box, his voice had retained power. But in February 2024, it fell silent. Alexei Navalny died on February the 16th at Penal Colony No. 3 in the town of Kharp in the Yamalo-Nenets region, about 1,900 kilometers northeast of Moscow, where he was serving a 19-year sentence on charges of extremism. According to the prison service, he had gone for a walk when he lost consciousness and died. In the immediate aftermath, the Kremlin simply said that it was aware of his death and the president had been informed. Across the world, however, there was shock and anger as tributes were paid to a man who some said gave his life, standing up to Russia's all-powerful leader. His consistent message was a simple one, that Mr. Putin's party was full of crooks and thieves. He accused President Putin of sucking the blood out of Russia through a feudal state, concentrating power in the Kremlin. That system, he claimed, was like Tsarist Russia. It helped that Navalny spoke the street language of younger Russians and used it to powerful effect on social media. His anti-corruption foundation, the FBK, made detailed claims about the official corruption. In 2011, he would lead large street protests against President Putin. For the rest of his life, he would be in and out of jail, while his organizations would be banned as extremist. In 2017, he was barred from standing in the general election. At the time, he was widely regarded as the only candidate with a chance of challenging President Putin. He would also survive several suspected and one confirmed attempts on his life.
In August 2020, Navalny collapsed on a flight over Siberia and was rushed to hospital in Omsk. That emergency landing saved his life. A German-based charity persuaded Russian officials to allow him to be airlifted to Berlin for treatment. In September, the German government revealed that the tests carried out by the military found unequivocal proof of a chemical nerve warfare agent of the Novichok group. The Kremlin denied any involvement and rejected the Novichok finding. Recovered Navalny returned to Moscow on 17 January 2021 and was immediately detained as he knew he would be. He said on Instagram that he felt he had never left, so there was no choice but to return. He would never be free again despite his supporters staging mass protests across Russia. Police responded to the protest with force, detaining thousands for attending the unauthorized rallies. Meanwhile, the Russian government continued to punish Navalny. In March 2022, his sentence was increased by 9 years after he was found guilty on new charges of embezzlement and contempt of court. He was moved to a new penal colony at Melekhovo, around 250 kilometers east of Moscow. In June 2022, his allies raised the alarm after they discovered he was no longer in that prison. Federal prison authorities later admitted he had been moved to a penal colony with a tough reputation, the IK-6 prison, more than 155 miles east of Moscow, where he said he was repeatedly placed in solitary confinement. His last sentence, handed down by judges in August 2023, and which extended his jail term to 19 years, saw him moved to a maximum security penal colony, usually reserved for Russia's most dangerous criminals, the IP-3 penal colony. Russian authorities still haven't announced the cause of his death at age 47.
Меня не должно было быть на этом месте. Я не должна была записывать это видео. На моем месте должен быть другой человек. Но этого человека убил Владимир Путин. Путин убил отца моих детей. Путин отнял самое дорогое, что у меня было, самого близкого и самого любимого человека. Мы обязательно узнаем и то, кто именно и как именно исполнил это преступление. Мы назовем фамилии и покажем лица. Я буду продолжать дело Алексея Навального, продолжать бороться за нашу с вами страну, и я призываю вас встать рядом со мной, разделить не только горе и бесконечную боль, которая окутала нас и не отпускает. Я прошу вас разделить со мной ярость. Ярость, злость, ненависть к тем, кто посмел убить наше будущее.
Many Western leaders blamed it on Putin, an accusation the Kremlin angrily rejected. Navalny's mother, Lyudmila Navalnaya, had to wait over a week to get authorities to release her son's body, as officials claimed that they needed to conduct post-mortem tests. She also made a video appeal to Putin to let her bury her son with dignity. Navalny was buried on Friday, March 1st, in a Moscow suburb in a funeral that drew thousands of mourners amid a heavy police presence. His team said several Moscow churches refused to hold the funeral.
One of Alex Navalny's famous quotes was, "The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good people to do nothing. So don't be inactive." We bring you this video, which was the last one that Alexei Navalny brought out.
Здесь у меня просто очевидная вещь. Ну, не сдавайтесь. Не надо, нельзя сдаваться. Если это произошло, это означает, что мы необыкновенно сильны в этот момент, раз они решили меня убить. но и нужно использовать эту силу. Не сдаваться. Помнить о том, что мы огромная сила, которая находится под гнетом вот этих вот чуваков плохих, лишь потому что мы не можем осознать, насколько действительно мы сильны. Все, что нужно для торжества зла, это бездействие добрых людей. Поэтому бездействовать не надо.
On Monday, France became the first country in the world to enshrine the right to abortion in its basic law, the Constitution, a move that has been staunchly opposed by the French bishops and by the Vatican. The Pontifical Academy for Life reiterates that precisely in the era of universal human rights, there cannot be a right to take a human life. The Academy wrote in a March 4th statement released by the Bishops' Conference of France following the historic vote. The Pontifical Academy for Life, which was the PAV, went on to appeal to all governments and all religious traditions to do their best so that in this phase of history, the protection of life becomes an absolute priority, with concrete steps in favor of peace and social justice, with effective measures for universal access to resources, education and health.
France has a bicameral legislature composed of a lower house, the National Assembly, and the upper house, the Senate. In January, the National Assembly voted to introduce the constitutional amendment on the freedom of women to have recourse to an abortion which is guaranteed. The Senate voted for a similar measure on March 1st. On Monday, the 4th of March, a joint session of Parliament passed the bill, which was followed by a drawn-out standing ovation. Later that evening, the Eiffel Tower was illuminated with the words, "My body, my choice," as jubilant onlookers celebrated a scene that was repeated all over the country. The amendment was championed by President Emmanuel Macron in 2023 and reflected a broader consensus among the French public. While some have suggested that Macron's support for the amendment was motivated by political reasons, others have expressed that the vote passed due to a shared sense of panic by French women, citing the US Supreme Court's June 2022 decision to repeal Roe v. Wade as an example. Pope Francis has long been a vocal opponent of abortion, calling it murder and saying that it is equivalent to hiring a hitman. In the PAV's March 4th letter, the body cited the Pope's words from a March 25, 2020 general audience, noting, "The defense of life is not an ideology, it is a reality, a human reality that involves all Christians, precisely because they are Christian and because they are human."
The month of March is known as the month of St. Joseph and is punctuated by the solemnity of St. Joseph, spouse of the Blessed Virgin Mary, which falls on March the 19th. St. Joseph, the foster father of Jesus and the husband of the Virgin Mary, is the patron of the Universal Catholic Church, and his life is recorded in the Gospels, particularly in the Gospels according to St. Matthew and St. Luke. Despite his humble work and means, Joseph came from a royal lineage. St. Luke and St. Matthew disagree a bit about the details of Joseph's genealogy, but they both mark his descent from David, the greatest king of Israel. Indeed, the angel who first tells Joseph about Jesus greets him as Son of David, a royal title used also for Jesus. This was to fulfill the prophecy of prophet Isaiah in chapter 7, verses 13 to 14, which says, "Then Isaiah said, 'Hear then, O house of David, is it too little for you to weary mortals, that you weary my God also? Therefore the Lord himself will give you a sign. Look, the young woman is with child and shall bear a son, and shall name him Emmanuel."
St. Joseph was an upright man who, as foster father of the child Jesus and husband of the Virgin Mary, cared for them. St. Joseph is also the patron saint of the dying and the working people. St. Joseph was declared patron of the Universal Church by Pope Pius IX in 1870. We know Joseph loved Jesus. His only concern was for the safety of this son entrusted to him. Not only did he leave his home to protect Jesus, but upon his return, settled in the obscure town of Nazareth out of fear for his life. When Jesus stayed in the temple, we are told Joseph, along with Mary, searched with great anxiety for 3 days for him. We also know that Joseph treated Jesus as his own son, for over and over the people of Nazareth say of Jesus, "Is this not the son of Joseph?" We know Saint Joseph respected God. He followed God's commands in handling the situation with Mary and going to Jerusalem to have Jesus circumcised and Mother Mary purified after Jesus' birth. We are told that he took his family to Jerusalem every year for Passover, something that could not have been easy for a working man. Since Saint Joseph does not appear in Jesus' public life, at his death or resurrection, many historians believe Joseph probably had died before Jesus entered public ministry. Saint Joseph is a patron saint of the dying because, assuming he died before Jesus' public life, he died with Jesus and Mary close to him, the way we all would like to leave this earth. Saint Joseph is also a patron saint of the universal church, families, fathers, expectant mothers, travelers, immigrants, house sellers and buyers, craftsmen, engineers, and working people in general. One of the most eminent church doctors and Bishop of Geneva, the famous Saint Francis de Sales, loved Saint Joseph so much that he spread everywhere he went the love he nurtured in his heart for the guardian of the Redeemer. His love for the splendor of patriarchs is shown in assigning to Saint Joseph the special patronage of the religious order he founded, namely the Order of the Visitation. Another saint greatly devoted to Saint Joseph was Saint Teresa of Avila. In her autobiography, she says, "I do not remember even now that I have ever asked anything of Saint Joseph which he has failed to grant. To other saints, the Lord seems to have given grace to succor us in some of our necessities. But of this glorious saint, my experience is that he succors us in them all." In his book, Christ is Passing By, Saint Jose Maria Escriva, the prelature of Opus Dei, beautifully comments on Saint Joseph's faith.
Thank you very much for watching. Until we meet next time, stay blessed.